So, I'm going to say 3 words. Black Lives Matter. And I want you to just see what your reaction was to that. Some of you might have a positive reaction, some of you might feel some discomfort with that. But there's some reaction going on when I say those words. And many people online are coming back and saying things like, well, all lives matter, and it's not just black lives. And so now you're seeing memes and things which say, well, we're not saying only black lives matter. We know other lives matter as well. But right now, black people are in particular risk of losing their lives because of systemic racism and oppression, and the explanations can follow from that. And so that's why Black Lives Matter. So I'm not here to argue or debate the terminology. A lot of people are trying to be helpful and saying things like, well, if you said Black Lives Matter too, the message would get across to people more clearly and they wouldn't feel excluded. So let's use this as an opportunity not to delve into the wordsmithing around what the Black Lives Matter movement has chosen. But what's going on with us when we hear those words? So, we already have a worldview. We already have certain agreements of how we're going to see the world and other people. And we have a way of filtering information as to whether it agrees with our worldview or not, or what our thoughts or beliefs are or not. And some of this is called unconscious bias, right? In that we're not always aware of that particular lens we have because it's somewhat unconscious in the way that, fish swim in water and they're not conscious of the water because that's the context they know. So just hold that as a possibility, that we all have to some extent some biases built in, and this applies to people of all races or ethnicities or creeds. It's not something limited to white people. South Asians like myself have a lot of unconscious bias around race as well. The point here is, what if we were able to just receive any information or words for what they were, without going immediately to our filtering process? And it's very difficult because that's really automatic, right? It's already there. And so we're listening for agreement. Do I agree with what this person is saying or what I'm reading? Does it make me uncomfortable? Does it align up with how I see the world or how I think I am? And that's usually how we listen to anything and how we respond. Those lenses are always on all the time. And so it's going to take work for us to dismantle that, not just in this instance, but in everything we hear and see and say, right? And there's a freedom in that because it gives us a moment to actually just receive what is being said and put out in the world without attaching a story to it. Let's just take a deep breath and just really listen to the 3 words I'm saying without extrapolating, without assuming that's excluding someone else. Really, without attaching any meaning beyond what I'm just saying. So for example, I could just say right now, the leaves around me are green. Okay, you can see them in the video. The leaves around me are green. That's all I'm saying. And it's an innocuous enough statement that most of you are going to receive that without any issue. You might say, oh, well, they're a dark green or they're light green. But it's going to be, you're not going to say, oh my gosh, no, he's wrong, that the leaves aren't green, or the leaves around him are not just green, they're also brown, because there's no charge attached to that for you. There's no filter, right? We have no filter or need for that kind of filter. So when I say Black Lives Matter, it's just that, Black Lives Matter. And now if you can just receive it without attaching the story or adding the explanation or adding your but, then there is a moment and an opportunity to examine your reaction, examine the space you live in, the space you inhabit, your beingness around this, without going to the mind or the brain or the biases we have. It's just what's so. Someone, a movement, has said Black Lives Matter. Okay. You don't have to agree. You don't have to disagree. You don't have to add. You don't have to subtract. You can just let those words land ever so gently. And you can then begin to see below the level of thought, below the level of a cognitive processing coming out in your mind through your words of what you're seeing. And if you can stop and hesitate in that space, you can just see then how those words are really landing with you. What is the emotion it's triggering? Is it fear of the unknown? Is it judgment of who is saying those words? Is it discomfort? Because maybe you've not paid much attention to Black Lives Mattering. And so it's a chance to look within yourself. Is it, oh yeah, I totally get it, I'm with you. That too is an immediate reaction, that support. And yes, I get that, and yeah, of course they do. Again, in a way, that is not allowing the full impact of what is said to be landing with me, to be listened to be heard, to be absorbed, without an immediate reaction. So I invite you all to just give space for that to really land, and then see what comes up without judgment. There may be anger, there may be fear, there may be a whole bunch of things that come up, but you won't know if you don't stop for just a moment and drop the charge of those words. Let them just be words spoken. It's just what someone has said. And there will be a richer meaning that will then emerge from you, maybe a deeper understanding. And this is not necessarily being pro or against that statement. It's just looking to see what comes up with you. Okay, try that and see what happens.